This reading is for lesson 1.01. As you can see here, we are in Newsela, and I'm going to be reading this article right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the picture, and we're going to begin. Today's article is called Writing, Reading Can Help People to Feel Better and Heal. All right, we're going to go ahead and begin. Addison Adele Hedges Koch had to deal with many difficult experiences in her life. She lived with a mother who had schizophrenia, a serious mental illness. Koch also grew up in several foster homes, fought cancer, and struggled with drug abuse. I really didn't believe I would make it through childhood, but the act of writing brought me through, she says. Now 61 and an award-winning poet, Koch teaches writing as a way of healing. Her students are cancer patients, children struggling with problems, doctors, families, and just about everyone else. Writing can be a way of thinking deeply, Koch says. It is a process that helps us understand both the good and bad things that happen to us. Reading is also healing, she says. Okay, so we're going to look at this next subheading here. Whoops. Reading, writing are good for your health. We learn through the experiences of the characters we read about, Koch says. Because we empathize or feel what others are feeling, we expand our understanding of other people in other situations. We are also less bothered by our own misfortunes. Koch points to books such as Frank McCourt's Angela's Ashes. In that book, the author writes about growing up poor in the 1930s and 1940s Ireland. Reading books like that makes us feel a little less alone, a little less troubled, she says. Humans have told stories to feel better through the ages. For example, think of fairy tales that teach moral lessons, or religious texts that wrestle with valleys of despair and mountains of hope, or poetry that cleanses the writer's soul. Recently, doctors and psychologists who study the mind have begun looking at the health effects of reading and writing, using our imaginations. Raymond Marr is a professor at York University in Toronto. He studies the effect reading fiction and nonfiction has on our ability to understand what others are feeling. He found that children and adults who have read stories their whole lives were more likely to correctly identify the feelings and thoughts of others than those who do not read regularly. In other words, people who read stories are better at sharing and understanding other people's feelings. Why? Because when people are reading fiction, they are imagining what it is like to be in these stories, Marr says. Trying to understand these characters exercises the same mental muscle that helps us understand people in the real world. It teaches us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. The better we are at that, the more likely we are to treat others well, he says. For adults, it doesn't appear to matter what you read, says Marr, so long as you are reading. With children, however, it's important to discuss what they are reading. Those conversations help them to understand the story and empathize with its characters. Reading stories is a chance for children and adults to talk about the complicated parts of life, Marr says. Mental health also benefits. Some doctors have also begun to see storytelling as a way to improve mental health. A movement called narrative medicine has been growing. It comes from the idea that both writing and reading literature can help doctors and patients to communicate better. Together, they can discover meaning in the illness they battle. Dr. John Harper of Texas Health Presbyterian Dallas supports this movement. He started the annual Literature and Medicine Conference at the hospital 5 years ago. Each year, an author is asked to speak, teach writing classes to hospital staff, and run an essay contest about how literature influences medicine. Harper says doctors who read stories are more understanding and, therefore, more compassionate or caring, more willing to listen to their patients' stories. It also helps doctors to communicate better, he says. The tiny differences in meaning in poetry and writing can communicate emotion far better than any scientific explanation, he says. The sound of a coffin hitting the earth is a sound utterly serious, Harper says, quoting one of his favorite lines from Antonio Machado's poem, The Burial of a Friend. He uses the line to communicate the depth of his intent to patients and family members facing deadly diseases. Saying something beautiful and full of meaning like that shows how serious he considers their illnesses and his sympathy for their suffering, he says. Write it down to move on. Writing is also healing, says Harper, who teaches other doctors that writing about their experiences is a way to release their emotions. If you have an experience and you sit down and write about it, you can pour that emotion out, Harper says. Getting rid of these thoughts and emotions helps to find meaning in the death or the survival of a patient, and then allows you to move on with your life, he says. That is the same message Koch teaches her writing students. Writing it down allows the quiet, thoughtful process that we all need as human beings to unravel the things in our life or enjoy the things we are having fun with fully, she says. All right, so that's our reading for lesson 1.01. If you want to, you can go into your course and you can read through this text on your own. During class, we will be referring back to the text multiple times. So it's important that you understand how to find the text and that you keep going back to it as we discuss the text.